President Trump took to Twitter this morning to make the case for imposing tariffs on America's major trading partners, tweeting, "Tariffs are the greatest. Either a country which has treated the United States unfairly on trade negotiates a fair deal, or it gets hit with tariffs. It's as simple as that, and everybody's talking. Remember, we are the piggy bank that's being robbed. All will be great." That comes as the U.S. Agriculture Secretary announced a $12 billion aid package for American farmers this afternoon to help relieve losses suffered from retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. So is the president right? Are American tariffs working to force other countries to renegotiate trade deals? And can countries like Canada sustain a trade war with the United States? It's time to bring in the power panel. Joining me now in Vancouver is former Conservative Cabinet Minister, now with Denton's, James Moore. In Calgary, Marcella Monroe with KTG Public Affairs. And in Toronto, Amanda Alvaro with Pomp and Circumstance. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Thanks for being with us. James, why don't I start with you? Is the president right? Can the U.S. sustain a tariff war or trade war, I guess, longer than smaller economies like Canada?
They can sustain it so long as he's prepared to inflict tremendous damage and harm to the American consumer and the American economy. You take President Trump's tweet and you take out the word tariff and you put in the word taxes, which is in fact the same thing. They are synonymous. And that tweet doesn't get much support, I think, from Republican voters and Republican members of Congress and the Senate. But look, you know, the American economy is doing well. You look at the stock market just this week, the numbers have gone up. You look at the jobs numbers, economic growth numbers. There's a buffer and a cushion there that's been built up. But boy, is President Trump sure threatening that buffer and that gap that he's built up with some of these actions that he's putting in place. But, you know, this is really a spiral down to the bottom. The American economy is going to feel the heat of this. There was a report out today that showed the American auto sector, all the benefits of the Trump tax cuts from the last quarter of last year have effectively been wiped out as a consequence of these tariff measures. So President Trump, I think, is playing a real risky long-term game with the health of the American economy and punishing in the short term American consumers, which precipitated this bailout today that he's put in place for the ag sector.
Amanda, James also mentioned sort of the negative reaction, and it's being amplified a bit towards this after this, following this aid package from other Republicans. But do you think that the Canadian government or others need to be concerned that that reaction has not really, it doesn't seem to have resonated with the president?
Well, nothing seems to resonate with him, and he's always doubling down, right? And he's also as desperate as he is deliberate. So you always know when he goes, and I know this happens often, like almost every day, but he unleashes kind of this desperate tweet, which precedes later on in the day this $12 billion bailout to farmers. The tweet starts with "tariffs are the greatest" and ends with "all will be great." And at the same time, we see a bailout package. It's like the other shoe that drops. It comes down the pipeline hours later, indicating to the Republican base, to the American voters, that in fact all is not great. Tariffs may not be the greatest, and in fact now we have to reach into taxpayers' pockets in order to bail out the farmers who have been affected by this. So I do think that he's facing a little more pressure. It's like the noose is getting a little tighter. But unlike most, you know, sort of reasonable politicians who would come out with a reasonable statement, his way of dealing with it is to unleash in this kind of like epic, grand way in order to garner attention and headlines, and again, double down on his position.
So, Marcella, what is the Canadian government, how do they navigate that?
Well, you know, I think we have to also put this in the context that European Commission Juncker is meeting with the president. And so, you know, this tweet was really the start to that meeting. And I think we also, you know, and it's not just us on this network. I mean, a lot of pundits on cable here and even in Britain and the US, you know, we tend to look at his tweets and they are very explosive and think that that signals some big policy idea. And really, he's usually just setting up his next clip. So to speak. So, you know, I think what Canada needs to remember is that we are not in this trade war together. If it was just our economy facing off against the United States, of course, it would be a lot to bear and be a lot more problematic. But you've got the European Commission, you've got China. He has a lot of very big balls in the air in this trade dispute. And so I would say that if he continues to want to go down this path, which is not just dangerous to the economy, as James pointed out, he's got the midterms in about 100 days. And so, you know, he's buying off the farmers today. Well, who's next? Because if he's not willing to try and find a negotiated settlement, he's going to have to buy off a lot more Americans if they don't want to lose the House.
But can that work, James? Could it be a possible successful strategy?
Well, it's not clear, look, the timing of the consequences of these tariffs on the domestic political market in the United States. I don't know that it'll hit the midterms. But look, this is, I'm opposed to socialism. This is socialism in full force. You have, saying, putting up walls, stopping foreign commerce from coming into the American marketplace, and then collecting those revenues from those tariffs, and then now having to subsidize business to try to fill the gap in order to play the domestic political game. The problem with that, obviously, is that it's unsustainable over time. The problem with that is that it fails the lessons of competitive and comparative economics that one hopes that we would have learned over the past 100 years, but apparently not. But equally, the problem is that at some point the tariff war will end. At some point there will be rationalization of these economic relationships, but the subsidies will endure. Because who is going to be the first politician to say that we're going to scale these back and pull these back? That's the challenge. So now you have this need to resolve the trade file, a need to stand down the tariff file, and then frankly a need over time to end the tariff subsidies, because the tariff subsidies will, at some point in time, be subject to WTO challenge by these partners of the larger trade relationship. So you're this tangled ball of socialism that's coming out of the White House in the form of Donald Trump is something that we're going to be dealing with for a very long time.
We've just got a few seconds left, Amanda, but Minister Freeland is headed to Mexico to meet with the new administration there. Mm-hmm. Is there any risk of a united front backfiring?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that a united front is exactly where the Canadian government needs to be. And I think if they were going to take anything from what's happened today in the U.S., it may be a signal to them that the crack is opening just a little bit. The bailout well is not unlimited. It is not endless. He can't keep going back there over and over again. So this might be the door that they need that's open enough for them to walk in to say, we might have a little bit of leverage here.